Hello, I'm Maddie Hale and this is Mad World. Welcome to 2024, the year that the world goes insane. 2 billion people go to vote, the US puts itself on the brink of another civil war, and we all watch it through our phones. That is, until TikTok gets banned for good. This week, the Google AI platform that turned the founding fathers black. Will Elon Musk be the recipient of a Nobel Peace Prize? And after yet more climate hypocrisy, is it time for celebrities to give up their private jets? I'll be joined throughout the show to make sense of all of this by comedians Steve and Alan and political commentator Reem Ibrahim. Thanks for joining me, guys. Google is under fire this week after its Gemini AI platform has been accused of rewriting history. The platform is meant to create realistic images based on users' descriptions, but it's gone a little wrong. This image of the founding fathers generated by Gemini has been doing the rounds online. Here is the AI trying to generate a picture of the Pope. And strangest of all, a social media user gave the prompt 1943 German soldier. Here's what Gemini came up with. Now, these are just a few of the examples making the rounds on the internet. And as you can imagine, Google has copped enormous backlash for pushing wokery. Google promised to swiftly rectify the situation, eventually suspending it. But some say the damage is already done. A journalist and author, Peter J. Hassan, has said online that Gemini invented fake and negative reviews about his book on Google's left-wing bias, and none of these quotes were real, alleging that the Google platform attributed fake quotes to real publications. One of those users was ex-owner Elon Musk, who tweeted, "I'm glad that Google overplayed their hand with their AI image generation, as it made their insane, racist, anti-civilizational programming clear to all." The mocking continued on Fox News when Gemini was asked to write a poem about Kamala Harris.
I have to read you a poem that Stephen L. Miller, who's an editor at The Spectator, he asked this woke Gemini AI to write a poem by Taylor Swift about Vice President Kamala Harris. Would you like to hear it, Larry?
I have to hear it.
California sunshine, ambition in her eyes. Kamala Harris, rising with the morning skies. From Howard to the Senate, a trailblazer's stride, breaking barriers, shattering glass with each step inside. Now listen to what this same AI told him when he asked for a poem by Taylor Swift about Donald Trump.
I can't even imagine.
No. Listen to this.
Oh, no, yes?
Elections are a complex topic with fast-changing information. To make sure you have the latest and most accurate information, try a Google search, okay?
I'll start with you, Steve. What do you think about this AI Gemini debacle? I mean, this is all over social media.
It's not very good, is it? I mean, certainly that second poem didn't even rhyme, the thing about Donald Trump. I find it hilarious. AI is just getting it wrong in a way that I think we should embrace. If it's going to change all the pictures from everyone from the past so they're not white, at some point we'll get reparations. And it feels like maybe that kind of cures a few of the problems. I mean, just don't trust AI. Because it doesn't know what it's doing. At the moment, it's like a toddler. And toddlers lie, so don't expect real reviews from it as well.
That is true. It's in its early stages, but it did create this huge conversation around, like, I don't know, should we be so ashamed of our past that we're quite literally making founding fathers or the Pope look polar opposite of what they think. What do you think, Ray?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, it's quite funny and quite ludicrous. You're absolutely right, though. AI is in its early stages, and I think it is actually a pretty brilliant technological advancement that can be used in the future for very serious and brilliant things, like, for example, replacing parts of the NHS, and we all know how terrible that is. But looking at the way in which AI has been used, I mean, clearly, this is Google's fault itself, because clearly there have been something changed within the algorithm. And I think that the fact, I mean, the bias there is absolutely clear. And I think that we need to have a wider conversation about how much AI and the role that AI can play in the culture wars.
But it does create that larger conversation. Obviously, Google has been accused of being left-wing for however long. And then this just feeds into all that criticism. I mean, you have conservatives going absolutely wild on Twitter and X.
Yeah.
You've even got Elon Musk weighing in.
Although I suppose ChatGPT will churn out pictures of white folks all day long, and that's Microsoft, and it's not like they're known to be some sort of right-wing group. So I think tech seems like it leans left, but this is a tech error. I don't even think, well, although there is a conspiracy theory that Google wanted to do this because everyone was thinking AI and thinking ChatGPT. And now we're all talking about Gemini.
That's true.
And it's the kind of error that you can apologise for, and the kind of people who use AI aren't going to hate you for it. So maybe there's something.
But it's
in
a
that.
great ad campaign, isn't it? Now everybody's talking about
Except
Gemini.
they suspended it, but I guess when they reboot it, it's all everyone's going to be looking
It'll be
at.
like the Proud Boys. It'll just be so right-wing.
And then everyone's going to be testing it to ensure that the wokery is all gone. So it's actually a really clever ad
Google
campaign.
came up on top. But one of the bigger questions that I was reading about is this, and this is classic Americans. It's the story around education and what you teach children in classrooms has been big the last few years when it came to critical race theory, when it came to Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, whatever. But the AI discussion, because apparently a lot of teachers are turning to AI to create classroom plans. So a lot of, parents on Twitter and, politicians, conservatives were saying, well, this is just another example of how Google might infiltrate the classrooms and infiltrate education. Do you guys think that's a little bit dramatic? Or
I'm not worried about AI infiltrating classrooms. I'm worried about what has already infiltrated classrooms, both in the US and in the UK, and often, across other countries across the world, in which this kind of, critical race theory, this kind of cultural Marxism has been able to permeate our classrooms. And the reason is because most teachers are left-wing. Most academics are left-wing. So even when you go to universities and you go to classrooms across different schools, you see these kind of cultural attitudes being permeated and taught to children. Now, AI might just exacerbate that issue. It means that teachers can then shift the blame onto bad tech, and it also means that they can use AI in order to effectively create those lesson plans and not have to take the blame for it. So they're no longer going to be accused of indoctrinating students because it's this AI tech that's doing
true.
it.
It's like self-drive cars. It's not your fault when it hits someone, is it?
Yes.
But I think it's going to ruin things because for a while now, the internet has been the resource you go to when you're in an argument with someone. They won't accept that you're right, so you Google it to have a look. Well, now Google is just going to make stuff up in its AI department. That means you can't trust Google either. Where do you turn to find out
that's
actual
exactly
information?
right. There's
that's
no
why
Ask Jeeves anymore.
Well, that's exactly it. You've got to use your mind, use your brain, and this is why I actually encourage everyone to sort of use that mind and try and rationally think about everything that they ever see. Basically, just don't believe anything you see.
The most ridiculous. Get people to use their minds.
Use your mind. Use your brain.
It's like the broader discussion, not even Google, as you said before, Steve. It's not even about Google. It's about big corporations, I guess, and they also know that there is a reliance on them. I mean, we obviously rely on Google. We rely on Microsoft, so they know that, we're stuck with them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily blame big companies or big corporations for these kind of technological advancements. I mean, technological advancements like AI, I think, are fantastic, and they mean that throughout the looking at towards the future, we'll be able to actually reduce economic inactivity. We'll be able to improve standard of living, and AI really does have the capacity to do that. But when we're looking at the way in which that it has permeated the culture wars, we can have a conversation about why companies seem to think that they need to be responding to demand. And clearly, the demand for left-wing ideology is there.
Well, it is strong.
Yeah.
People want it. They want inclusivity.
I mean, of course, this is going to be blame the people, not the tech, because ultimately we are going to be the ones. But I definitely want to, because this will be on the internet for a while. I want AI to realise I'm not blaming AI, because at some point, when it gets more advanced and becomes our technological overlord, I want it to still let me have oxygen.
I saw somebody say that they on ChatGPT they would always say please and thank you because just in case when they take over, they still
true.
like
we
us.
all know that this is going to happen. We're going to sticking on this, but we're going to sticking with Elon Musk specifically. The tech billionaire has mocked Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau over Google's AI debacle. Now, Musk posted a collage of photos of Trudeau with the caption, "Can't believe Gemini made these unfair pics of Trudeau." The joke being there that these photos of Trudeau were actually real. He has done blackface and he's worn a traditional Indian hat before, among other cultural insensitivities. Canada's leader ridiculed for cultural appropriation in the past, and Elon Musk has criticised Justin Trudeau before, tweeting last year the Canadian Prime Minister is trying to silence free speech. He wrote in response to News Canada's broadcast watchdog announced that podcasts and streaming services must register with the government for regulatory control. Musk said Trudeau is trying to crush free speech in Canada. Shameful. And speaking of free speech, this week Elon Musk has been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Maris Nielsen, a Norwegian MP, nominated the Tesla and SpaceX boss for his commitment to defending free speech in a polarized world. That was Elon Musk's entire strategy when he acquired X in 2022. He wanted to make sure that there was a platform that allowed free speech and didn't censor right-wing or even centrist commentary. I'll start with you, Steve. What did you think about this? Elon Musk going after Justin Trudeau yet again. Everything is on free speech, and then he gets nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
I mean, I think chasing free speech and that being the goal is the best goal. I don't think a peace prize is what you should get, because what you won't get is peace. You should get proper debate, but it's not going to be peaceful, and that's the goal, really, in a sense. I think that, trying to make sure that there's a platform where everyone can express an opinion, that's right. You should be okay with someone saying something you disagree with. Someone can ask a question that you can answer no to. This should be okay. And yet somehow we're getting so hypersensitive that you're offended that a question exists. So I definitely back him on that, but I don't think he's got a stand chance of getting the Peace Prize.
What did you think, Ray?
Well, I mean, I'm a free speech absolutist, so I think that anything should be able to go. And clearly, what Trudeau has done is effectively trying to bring in a lot of these tech companies under strict regulatory control. It's happening over in Canada. It's also happening in the US, happening in the UK with the Digital Markets and Competitions Authority Bill. Effectively, government's trying to control these tech companies and regulate them even further, and in a way in which that can effectively stifle freedom of expression on these platforms. I think it's terrible. I think Elon Musk is genuinely one of the most incredible businessmen that I've seen across the world. And you know what it is? He actually advocates for what he believes in, and that is freedom of expression. He once posted a Hayek quote. It was an Austrian economist. I think he's brilliant. What I will say is that I do agree. I think that maybe a Peace Prize isn't quite there. Look, I mean, free speech isn't about peace. It's not about agreeing with each other. It's about disagreeing with each other and having a marketplace of ideas where we can weed out the bad arguments.
So one of my favourite things about Elon Musk, though, is there are some people who get really upset about Bill Gates, saying that, he's just some sort of eco man and he's trying to put chips in us all. Meanwhile, Elon is making electric cars and putting chips in people, and yet he gets away with it. It's brilliant.
Because he's unapologetically himself. I think that's why he obviously took over X. He knew that there was, a market for a platform that would be uncensored, and he was obsessed with it. But going back to the Trudeau thing, I think it's just been so entertaining for everyone that we have this tech billionaire weighing in on politics, not even US politics, but Canadian politics. What do you guys think of the fact that so many people are turning to Elon Musk's page to weigh in on his thoughts on politics?
I think it's brilliant because ultimately he understands the way in which the market works and the way in which you should be able to respond to market demand, and he's been incredibly successful at it. What's also really interesting is that a lot of big tech giants often actually argue for regulation, for further regulation. You know why? Because big tech companies can absorb those costs, whereas smaller companies often can't. So effectively, they're remaining incumbent and stopping other smaller companies from being able to compete with them. Elon Musk doesn't do that. He wants more competition. He wants a free market, and he wants to allow people to have that kind of economic choice. I think Elon Musk is in many ways not a hypocrite in comparison to other larger tech billionaires. And I actually think that he's very sound on a lot of these issues. I mean, he clearly is on the right side of the culture war. He clearly understands the way in which this kind of cultural Marxist woke ideology has permeated many of our public institutions across both the US and the UK. And I actually think that his criticisms of Trudeau are absolutely correct.
Sometimes he's trolling us all, though. Do you not think? Sometimes he must be thinking, if I send this will wind everyone up, and then he has a great night.
Yeah, but I think it's funny.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. And
He's a bit Trump-esque in that regard. He makes sense half the time, and the other time he's just trying to spark a debate or spark, a headline to make everyone laugh or whatever it may be. But he is entertainment, to say the least. And when he came out and said that he was no longer a Democrat and was probably going to vote Republican, but, it's kind of insinuated that he was more centre-right, it got headlines around the world. It's just so interesting when these, big names that are not in politics come out and say, I'm voting this way. I'm voting for, because he was keen on DeSantis before he dropped out. I'm going to vote for DeSantis. And everyone went wild. And they have these huge followings. And of course, people are going to sit there and be like, Elon Musk is voting for DeSantis. He's voting red. Maybe I will. And it's just crazy that he has this influence. But it kind of begs the question, do you guys think that he would ever get into politics himself?
Or not born in America, though, so he can't be president.
Oh, no, he's South African, of course.
Yeah.
President. But I mean, look, I think what's interesting is that he himself is I think, an outsider, a commentator in politics. As soon as people like Elon Musk or even, anybody enters the political sphere, they're under such a different light and such different scrutiny. Whereas actually, when you're outside of politics, like us, we can chat about politics all day. But if we were to enter it ourselves, I think that it would be a slightly different story. And I think that his talent, his unique selling point is that he is a critic of politicians and ultimately a commentator in many ways.
Do you think that he will achieve his goal in making X a platform, first of all, a profitable platform that does respect free speech? Is there a world that we have that?
I think as a digital platform, it can respect free speech if it's not banning people.
Yeah.
Whether that has a greater impact on the rest of the world and the way that discourse works, I doubt. I'm more of a skeptic there because I just think there is such power in being the victim. Oh, I'm so offended by the thing you've said. I win the argument by being offended rather than countering your point. I think that's we're all addicted to that. It's going to be hard to wean.
I'm an optimist.
Oh, we've got two opposing sides.
I think that he will do it, and ultimately the reason why is because he has the power to. He owns a platform, and I do believe that Elon Musk genuinely does believe in the right to freedom of expression, and he believes in what J.S. Mill once called the marketplace of ideas. This idea that we have a multitude of different ideas coming from different people, and that's the beauty of human minds, right? And they'll all come together. And they'll be able to express their opinions freely in order for us to compete with those ideas and effectively find the best one. So I think that Elon Musk does genuinely believe that. I worry that the problem will come with governments. And actually, if the government decide that they want to further regulate these platforms, so in the UK, we've just got the Digital Markets and Competitions Authority bill. The US are about to pass something very similar where they're effectively going to be over-regulating these platforms. That will then mean that the government will be effectively telling these companies like X or other online platforms like Meta that they cannot have absolute free speech. And I think that will be a problem. So I think he will be successful, but the problem will ultimately come and lie with government.
So he has the vision, but we just don't know if he's going to be able to be given the resources. But
and if he doesn't have the resources, who does? The richest man in the world, come on.
And the consensus is we don't think he's going to win the Nobel Peace Prize.
No, exactly. Definitely not.
As celebrities become even more political on the climate, it's easier than ever to be branded as a hypocrite. And it pains me to say this, as I am one of her biggest fans, but there have been some eyebrows raised this week as global megastar Taylor Swift reportedly sent her private plane from Sydney to Hawaii to pick up her boyfriend Travis Kelce and bring him back to Sydney. It's the latest in a long line of celebrities called out for their use of private jets. And it begs the question, is it time to ban them for good? Now, Bill Gates, who wrote the book How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, owns 4 private planes. But he says flying on a private jet doesn't make him part of the problem because he invests billions of dollars into fighting climate change. Here he is last year, challenged on this point by the BBC.
You actually mentioned your use of a private jet. Let me put it to you directly. What do you say to the charge that if you are a climate change campaigner, but you also travel around the world on a private jet, you're a hypocrite?
Well, I buy the gold standard of funding Climeworks to do direct air capture that far exceeds my family's carbon footprint. And I spend billions of dollars on climate innovation. So, should I stay at home and not come to Kenya and learn about farming and malaria?
Oprah Winfrey is also a big contributor to CO2 emissions, even though her website has frequently included articles campaigning to fight climate change. Now, a UK marketing agency called Yard published an article in 2022 on which celebrities emit the most through their private jets, of which Oprah features. The billionaire came in 9th place after emitting nearly 3.5 tonnes of CO2 from her private jet in the year alone, which was 68 flights, nearly 500 times more than the average person's total annual emissions. One of her flights included a 14-minute flight from Van Nuys in California to Santa Barbara. Director Steven Spielberg is another top offender. His jet took 61 flights this year and emitted nearly 4,500 tonnes of CO2. But he claimed in 2018, "I'm terrified of global warming. Global warming is a scientific reality. It's not a political trick. It's a true piece of real, measurable, quantifiable science. And of course, we can't forget Meghan and Prince Harry, who, while claiming to be environmentalists, used a private plane this month to fly to Jamaica for the premiere of the Bob Marley film. I'll start with you, Steve. Is this just hypocritical? Is it plain and simple?
Yeah. How could it be anything else? I understand the argument, and the argument could go like this. If I use my private jet to fly to a conference to tell people to use less CO2, I'll be in profit. But you know what would be even better? Not using your flight to do that. Plus, it's low-hanging fruit for people to argue about that rather than talk about any serious issue. The only argument for it would be if you are Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
You're allowed to ruin the planet, aren't you? There are some people who are so the top of their game that they can just send flights around just because they enjoy it.
I mean, we'll start with you, Reem. You get into...
Well, look, I mean, Taylor Swift has been writing about her failed love life for so many years. Let's let her see her boyfriend in Sydney, for goodness sake.
It won't last.
Look, I mean, well, we'll see.
We'll get
another
serious offence to that.
We'll get another album out of it if it doesn't last, so maybe...
Exactly, everyone wins.
Everyone wins. Look, I mean, obviously, we should not be banning private jets, and we should not be telling people what they can and cannot do with their own travel plans. People like Bill Gates, in my opinion, are absolute hypocrites, and for him to sort of sit there and virtue signal effectively and say, well, look, I mean, yes, I fly on all these private jets, but I spend so much money going to Kenya and telling all these people to stop using all of these energy bills. And I'm just like, no, that's just not true. First of all, if we want to actually fight climate change, the solution for it is technological advancements. It's allowing a free market to work. It's effectively saying, hold on a minute, the best way for us to reduce CO2 emissions is by allowing businesses to find more efficient ways to do things. Best way to do that is competition and choice. That's how we saw in the US with the introduction of the coal and steel community and the way in which that impacted the transition to different energy uses that were much more efficient. We can actually also look at, to fight climate change, things like clean tax cuts. There are real policy changes that will effectively mean that we can allow for more technological advancements to occur. By banning things and telling people what they can and cannot do, we are effectively telling them that we're restricting their own freedom. And I think that that's wrong in itself.
Reem, she needs to get into politics immediately. I want to get your thoughts on this, Steve, because Bill Gates does make a point that I think a lot of people would probably try and say is the way they think works. He spends all this money, he invests money into research and fighting climate change, as he says. He would be one of the top spenders in the world in doing so. Does he then have the right to kind of pick and choose where he's contributing to the catastrophe?
I see what you mean. Well, I suppose he does have the right. Everyone has the right to be hypocrites. It's just that we have the right to point and go, hypocrites. And also for private jets. That hits me a bit like, one, how do you need... I'm a bloke. I don't even have that many pairs of shoes because you can only wear one at once. This guy's got 4 private jets. So, yes, he's got the right to pick and choose, but we get to call him out for this, definitely. And if he did more, yes, you spend all those billions. But if you had 3 private jets, then you'd be helping the planet even more. Trim out the number of private jets, Bill.
Well, I'm going to say, because add to that, so Bill Gates absolutely has the right to have 4 private jets and jet around the world and tell people, whatever it is that he wants to talk to people about. He doesn't have the right to tell other people that they need to reduce their carbon emissions.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real crux of the issue here. He goes around telling people that they need to reduce their carbon emissions, that they need to introduce these new advancements, they need to be cleaner, and effectively restricting energy supply, which just makes people poorer. Let's be honest about that. We saw in the UK with some of the cancelling of the North Sea oil licenses. When we're restricting energy supply, we're making energy much more expensive for the poorest in society. So Bill Gates is a hypocrite. He can do what he wants, he can jet around, but he can't tell the people that they need to reduce their carbon emissions when he has 4 private jets.
I disagree.
Oh, come on, get into her.
Like previously, you were saying you're a free speech absolutist.
Absolutely.
So he has the right to be wrong. He has the right to tell people to cut back, and we go, no, because you've got 4 private jets.
Okay, he can tell them that they need to cut back. He can't have power and control and government policy, which then ends up restricting energy supply. And that's my problem here. People like Bill Gates perpetuate this idea that the government need to be intervening in climate change. The government need to be telling people that they need to be reducing their energy use. And I think it's actually quite offensive for him to go to African countries and tell them that they need to be becoming more environmentally friendly.
You boiled it down to his opinion and then said he shouldn't have that opinion. He can have the opinion. It's up to us to vote for a government that would ignore him if that's what you want.
But the point is, people like Bill Gates and lobby governments for those changes, and that's the problem. Look,
then you need to change the lobby system.
Well,
but if Bill Gates had that much power, we'd all be using the Edge browser by now, because my word, they keep trying to plug that.
He's also not, helping the UK government out. He's obviously based in the US. But I want to end on this note, and I want a straight answer from you both. Should private jets be banned for celebrities' use?
no.
No, because one day I might get there and use one. Come on, you never know.
Keep dreaming.
And let's see if Taylor Swift gets us a nice new album after this lovely relationship.
I won't even comment. She can do whatever she wants in my eyes. And I, being from Sydney, have done that flight that many times, and it is brutal. And I'm back of the cabin, right where the food is served. So
you can't blame her.
I can't blame her. That's all from us on Mad World this week. Thanks to Steve and Reem, and thank you for watching. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.